Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 787 by Assemblymember Roger Hernandez, enacting to charter schools.
Senator Leno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, current law states that charter schools may organize as nonprofit organizations, but is silent as to whether they may organize as for-profit corporations. For those of us in business, even for those of us not in business, we know that businesses organize as for-profit corporations for a primary purpose. That's to make money. That's the nature of the game, nothing wrong with it, except when it infringes upon our public school system. Charter schools are public schools. Charter schools are paid for by public taxpayer dollars. All this bill does is proactively states in statute that a charter school may not operate as a for-profit corporation. They may continue to contract out with for-profit corporations. They may even contract out to have the school managed by a for-profit corporation, but it cannot operate as a for-profit corporation. That's all it does. I think we all understand that if there's a profit motive, first and foremost, that will impact the classroom. And that's not why we have a public school system, for people to be making profits. It's to educate our children. I ask for your aye vote.
Members, debate or discussion on this item? Debate or discussion? Senator Allen.
Members, I'm going to vote for this measure. There have been a lot of controversy and concerns that were raised about some of the wording, but I take, when the senator from San Francisco, I think, articulated what has been assured me over and over again about the intent of this bill. And so I just want to say for the record that his very tethered and carefully crafted description of the bill is my understanding of the bill, and that's why I'm going to support it here today. And I want to state that for the record in case there is future controversy about the wording and implementation of this bill.
Senator Huff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I haven't really heard an articulated reason why we need to have this bill. Maybe I missed something. But out of the 1,184 charters we have, 7 are for-profit. And they've been grandfathered in. So is this preemptive strike? What is it? You know, most of the people can't figure out why there's a need for the bill, but absent that, I'm voting no.
Members, additional debate or discussion on this item? Senator Leno, would you like to close?
Thank you. I don't see this so much as a preemptive strike as putting into law solid, found reasoning. I ask for your aye vote.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. No. Bates. No. Bell. Berryhill. No. Block. Aye. Cannella. No. De Leon. Fuller. No. Gaines. No. Gaggiani. Glazer. Hall. Hancock. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Hill. Aye. Wesso. Aye. Huff. No. Jackson. Latta.
Aye.
Aye. Leno. Aye. Leba. Aye. Liu. No. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Monning. Aye. Morlock. No. Morrell. No. Wynn. No. Nielsen. No. Pan. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Roth. Aye. Runner. No. Stone. No. Vidak. No. Wykowski. Aye. Wolk.
Senator Leno moves the call. Moving on, members, the next couple items are file item 166, Senator Wesso, 167, Senator Berryhill, 169, Senator Hall, 170, Senator Wesso. Moving back to file item 166, Senator Wesso. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 1323 by Assemblymember Frazier, enacting to marine debris.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, AB 1323 creates an expedited process for agencies to remove marine debris, which is defined as a vessel or part of a vessel that is unseaworthy and not reasonably fit as a means of transportation by water. The purpose of this bill is to deal with derelicts, wrecks, hulks, and parts of ships that are no longer truly vessels and serve no other purpose than to pollute our waterways. Although current law provides the authority for a sheriff to deal with the wrecked property and abandoned vessels, the current required procedures are both time-consuming and costly. This bill will fix that process. It'll make it easier to remove this trash from our waterways. This bill is supported by a broad coalition of boaters, boating safety officers, and the State Lands Commission. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Members, debate or discussion on this item? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. Aye. Bates. Bell. Berryhill. Aye. Block. Aye. Canella. Aye. De Leon. Aye. Fuller. Aye. Gaines. Aye. Galgiani. Aye. Glazer. Aye. Hall. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Hill. Aye. Wesso. Aye. Huff. Aye. Jackson. Aye. Lara.
Aye.
Aye. Leno. Aye. Leyva. Aye. Liu. Aye. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Mitchell. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Morlock. Aye. Morrell. Aye. Wynn. Aye. Nilsson. Pan. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Roth. Aye. Runner. Aye. Stone. Aye. Vidak. Aye. Wykowski. Aye. Wolk.
Call the absent members.
Bates. Aye. Nielsen. Aye. Bell. Wolk. Aye. Bell.
Members, we're going to announce the vote, so if we can have everybody on the floor. Secretary, please call the absent members.
Bell. Aye.
Ayes 40, no 0. The measure passes. Members, we're going to go back to a couple items we have that are on call for the purpose of moving forward. Members, we're going to begin with file item 125, SB 210. That's file item 125. Secretary, please call the absent members.
Allen. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Jackson. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Wynn. Aye. Nilsson.
Call the absent members.
Nilsson.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Assembly amendments are concurred in. Moving on to file item 126, SB 557. Secretary, call the absent members.
Jackson. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Wynn. Wynn, aye. Jackson, aye.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Assembly amendments are concurred in. Moving on to file item 127, SCR 15. Secretary, please call the absent members.
Hall. Aye. Jackson. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Wynn. Aye.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Assembly amendments are concurred in. Moving on to file item 128, members, SB 272. File item 128, SB 272. Secretary, call the absent members.
Fuller. Jackson. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Jackson, aye. Mitchell, aye. Wynn. Aye.
Ayes 39, no 0. The Assembly amendments are concurred in. Moving on to file item 129, SB 282. Secretary, call the absent members.
Fuller. Jackson. Fuller, aye. Jackson, aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Wynn. Mitchell, aye. Wynn, aye. Nilsson. Nilsson, aye.
Ayes 40, no zero. The Assembly amendments are concurrent. Moving on to file item 130, SB 383. Secretary, call the absent members.
Jackson. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Morrell. No. Wynn. Aye. Pan. Aye. Runner. No. Wynn. Aye to no.
Ayes 27, noes 13. The Assembly amendments are concurrent. Moving on to file item 131, SB 493. Secretary, call the absent members.
Allen. Aye. Bates. Jackson. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Morrell. Aye. Wynn. Aye. Nilsson. No. Runner. Bates, no. Runner.
Ayes 35, no zero. The Assembly amendments are concurrent. Ayes 35, noes 4. The Assembly amendments are concurrent. Moving on to file item 132, SB 758. Secretary, call the absent members.
Anderson. Aye. Fuller. Glazer. Aye. Jackson. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Morlock. Wynn. Aye. Nilsson. Aye. Runner. Fuller, no. Morlock, no. Anderson, aye to no. Nilsson, aye to no. Runner, no.
Ayes 35, noes 5. The Assembly amendments are concurrent. Moving on to file item 140, AB 562. File item 140, AB 562. Please call the absent members.
Jackson. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Wynn. Aye. Nilsson. Aye. Pavley. Aye.
Ayes 40, no 0. The measure passes. Moving on to file item 157, members, AB 605. Secretary, please call the absent members.
Allen. No. Bates. Berryhill. Fuller. Aye. Jackson. Mendoza. Jackson, aye. Mendoza, aye. Wynn. Aye. Runner. Aye. Wolk.
Ayes 36, noes 1. The measure passes. Moving on to file item 163, AB 1287. Secretary, please call the absent members.
Fuller. Aye. Jackson. Lou. Aye. Nilsson. Aye. Jackson, aye.
Ayes 40, no 0. The measure passes. Moving on to file item 165, AB 787, members. Secretary, please call the absent members.
Bell. Aye. De Leon. Aye. Galgiani. Aye. Glazer. Hall. Jackson. Aye. Mitchell. Wolk. Hall, aye.
Secretary, please call the absent members.
Glazer. Mitchell. Wolk.
Ayes 22, noes 15. The measure passes. Members, we are back to Assembly third reading. File item 167, Senator Berryhill. Secretary, please read. File item 167, members.
Assembly Bill 665 by Assemblymember Frazier and Ackling to Fish and Wildlife.
Senator Berryhill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President and members. This bill, AB 665, simply reaffirms that the state is a lead regulatory authority regarding wildlife management decisions. This bill will ensure that there is a comprehensive, centralized approach to wildlife management. In addition, AB 665 maintains and strengthens the Fish and Game Commission's authority to adopt regulations that are necessary for public safety, including emergency measures. The bill was on consent in the Assembly and has not received a single no vote throughout the entire legislative process. That was supported by, or is supported by, sportsmen's organizations, landowner associations, and wildlife conservation groups, including the California Game Wardens. I urge an aye vote.
Members, the better discussion on this item. Senator Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, I have to rise in opposition to this bill. Pursuant to my reading of the bill, it undermines the authority of local jurisdictions to regulate the discharge of firearms on sensitive public lands or lands adjacent to public parks or recreation. In essence, the bill says that on navigable waters of the state, local jurisdictions have no standing to regulate hunting. Translation, the discharge of firearms. Therefore, all along the waters of the San Pablo and San Francisco Bays in my district, and potentially many other public waterways in the state, it will be whatever Fish and Game regulations choose to make them. These amendments were mounted late, and the opposition really only came forward in the last month when the amendments showed up. The bill was opposed by the County of Los Angeles, the East Bay Regional Park District, the Mid-Peninsula Open Space District, the Humane Society, the Sierra Club, the California Parks and Recreation Society, and many others. As the author of a bill, AB 1279 in 2005, which created the Bay Water Trail, which is now being implemented by BCDC and encourages public access to the waters of the San Francisco Bay, kayaking, windsurfing, sailing, and has already succeeded in setting up a number of public access sites. This really could put many individuals at risk. I am not aware that restrictions on hunting is a major problem in the state, and I think the status quo should stay.
Senator Ellen.
Senators, I also rise in opposition to this bill. I stayed off of this bill in the Natural Resources and Water Committee, hoping that the issues that were raised by local government in the course of the discussion of this bill and some of the agencies could be addressed. It just simply hasn't happened, and now, in fact, a whole set of new local governments have come on in opposition. Many of them were mentioned by the senator from Berkeley. That include, my county, Los Angeles, City, Santa Monica, the Mid-Peninsula Open Space District, and Senators Hill, Monning, and Bell's district. So what concerns me about this bill is how it may invalidate the hundreds of local ordinances on the books seeking, in some way, to in some way reconcile diverse recreational uses with hunting and or the discharge of firearms. This is a local control issue. We've got parks that are in urban areas that simply don't want to see hunting, don't want to see the discharge of firearms in their areas. I just don't want to tell local governments that their right to set their own rules in this area over their own parkland should be impinged upon. That's why I'm voting no on this and urge my colleagues to do so as well.
Members, additional debate or discussion on this item. Senator Berryhill, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just a couple notes. For starters, the navigable water rights are in the Constitution right now, so that really kind of goes without saying. This bill really allows local rights for private property owners, and so I don't see the argument when it comes to losing private rights for local jurisdictions, because it really doesn't do that. It just allows what it should be, which is the right for private owners to dictate what they want or do not want on their lands. And so, again, I think this is a good, common sense bill, and I think it deserves your aye vote today. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? No. Anderson? Aye. Bates? Bell? No. Berryhill? Aye. Block? No. Canella? Aye. De Leon? Fuller? Gaines? Aye. Galgioni? Aye. Glazer? No. Hall? Aye. Hancock? No. Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? No. Hueso? Aye. Huff? Aye. Jackson? No. Lada?
No.
No. Leno? No. Leyva? Aye. Liu? No. McGuire? Aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mitchell? No. Monning? Morlock? Aye. Morrell? Aye. Wynn? Aye. Nilsson? Aye. Pan? Pavley? Roth? Aye. Runner? Aye. Stone? Aye. Vidak? Aye. Wachowski? Wolk? Wolk aye.
Call the absent members.
Bates? Aye. De Leon? Aye. Fuller? Aye. Monning? Pan? Aye. Pavley? Wachowski?
Ayes 26, noes 11. The measure passes. Moving on to file item 169. Senator Hall. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Joint Resolution 13 by Assemblymember Ridley Thomas relative to the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Senator Hall.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Senators, AJR 13 recognizes the 50th anniversary of the passage of the Voting Rights Act, which took place on August 6, 1965. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 is a landmark piece of federal legislation that has sought to protect every citizen's right to vote for the last half century. Although the 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870, by 1910, violence and intimidation resulted in nearly all black citizens being disenfranchised and removed from voter rolls in the former Confederate states, undermining the promise of equal protection under the law. Latino, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native American communities all experience similar attempts to disenfranchise citizens in their communities throughout these United States. During these times, voters faced first-generation barriers such as poll tax, literacy tests, vouchers of good character, disqualification for crimes of moral turpitude, and other tactics intended to keep minorities from the polls on Election Day. To build a stronger and more cohesive state and nation, we must continue to help advance the cause of voter equality and equal access to political process for all people, and to educate, quite honestly, the next generation on the importance of civic engagement in our communities. This resolution recognizes, honors, and remembers those who struggled and died for the freedom to vote, and urges Congress and the President of the United States to continue to secure citizens' rights to vote and remedy any racial discrimination in voting. I encourage everyone to join me in observing this important milestone in history. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Members, debate or discussion on this item. Debate or discussion. Seeing and hearing none, is there objection to using a unanimous roll call? Seeing and hearing none, ayes 40, no 0. The measure passes. Moving on, members, to file item 170, Senator Hueso. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 99 by Assemblymember Lopez relative to Salvadoran American Day.
Senator Hueso.
Mr. President, Senators, ACR 99 recognizes September 6, 2015 as Salvadorian American Day. In the 80s and 90s, Salvadorians immigrated to the United States predominantly due to civil war in El Salvador. Many of them have settled in various parts throughout our state, and thanks to that, many of us get to enjoy the wonderful pupusas, of a staple in their diet, a wonderful contribution to the Californian cuisine. Salvadorian Americans have become an important part of California's social fabric, the economy, by not only performing their civic duties, but establishing business districts, as in the El Salvador corridor in Los Angeles and other parts. And we know there's a big community of El Salvadorians in San Francisco as well. We want to recognize this important community and recognize their contribution to strengthening California's fabric of diversity. And for that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote for this important measure.
Members, debate or discussion on this item? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, is there objection to using our unanimous roll call? Seeing and hearing none, ayes 40, no 0, measure passes. Members, the next 5 items in line are item 176, Senator Vidak; 178, Senator Hertzberg; 180, Senator Hancock; 184, Senator Allen; 185, Senator Leyva. Please be prepared. Beginning with file item 176, Senator Vidak. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 144 by Assemblymember Mathis, an act relating to dumping.
Senator Vidak.
Mr. President and members, today I present Assembly Bill 144, which will increase the fines on individuals who are engaged in illegal dumping on private property. This bill is sponsored by Tulare County Sheriff and District Attorney and received unanimous support. I ask for your aye vote.
Members, debate or discussion on this item? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Senator Berryhill.
Yeah, just real quick, as a farmer, it is a real problem in rural counties of people just dumping out on our ranches. And when it happens right before harvest, you know, you're getting ready to get out there with a grape harvester or whatever, and it becomes a danger, really. So this is a very good measure, and I highly recommend an aye vote. Thank you.
Members, there's no debate or discussion on this item. Senator Vidak, would you like to close?
I ask for your aye vote.
Members, is there any objection to using our unanimous roll call? Seeing and hearing none, ayes 40, no 0, the measure passes. Moving on to item 178, Senator Hertzberg. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 221 by Assemblymember DeBobne, an act relating to vehicles.
Senator Hertzberg.